Well, pull up a chair and set a spell here at Tales from SYL Ranch Live, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have the Fandi Masters mini review of the last episode of Doctor Who for this season, The Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos. Hi, Larry, how are you doing today? And to explain my show for new viewers or people like Larry who might not come in right at the top of the hour, I do live reviews. Sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do schlock, and sometimes I do something with a broad appeal, like Doctor Who. Usually, however, I stick from a period from about 1900 to 1980, and that's because the period after 1980 is pretty well documented, what with all the great science fiction we got afterwards, and all the great technology that we got that lets us do the documentation. But the period from 1900 to 1980 contains a lot of science fiction fandom and a lot of science fiction that isn't really documented. So part of the reason I do the show is to document it. It is live, so I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. You can tell me if I'm full of crap, if I'm missing something, or if I just happen to be an amazingly hoopy fruit, which is probably more likely. I also go into more depth than most reviewers. I don't just say if I like the film or not. I talk about the acting, the direction, the cinematography, and some mechanics of making the film. And I can do that because, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. And so I can speak with some authority. Not as much authority as a modern working actor. Never want to give that impression. But with some authority. As they often say, those who can do, and those who can't teach. And my reviews are probably a little more like teaching. However, my Doctor Who reviews are mini reviews, so I don't go into the same type of depth that I would usually on my Monday reviews. But I think you're going to find that I still go into more depth than most YouTubers. And what I tried to do is I tell you not just how I or you may have felt, but why. What went into making us feel that way. Attack of the Schlocky Tomatoes. Yep, that's later this month. I think, later this month I'm doing Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So yes, that'll be a fun little one to really do. Oddly enough, it's schlock, but it's good schlock. You know, I mean, it's intentional. It's all self-aware schlock. So now, as a non-spoiler review for this episode, I can say this is a mediocre episode that is masquerading as an epic season finale. The visuals were nice, but I found the story utterly predictable. Maybe that's because I am the Fandi master, but I saw it all coming. You know, once we had some key facts, I totally saw it coming. So with that, I guess I will issue myself a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a Fandi master, and that means the fandom is strong with me, and that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst, I figure it out about a half an hour too early. This is not, however, a boast or a brag. This is unfortunately where you find yourself after you've watched, read, and listened to about 100 years worth of science fiction. You can't see the new stuff for the entire century that came before, and you find that there's just very little that's new in the world. Now, as to the story on this puppy. Well, I'm assuming that if you stayed with me past the spoiler alert, you probably watched this. Or if you didn't watch it, you just don't care if you're going to have the whole thing spoiled for you. So I'm not going to sit here and go through the synopsis. I do that a lot on my Monday reviews, but not for these mini ones. Okay, cringe moments. I like to get those out of the way first, and there were a lot of cringe moments on this one. To begin with, the return of Sim Shah. Well, I know it was supposed to be kind of epic, but to be honest, that guy could have been anybody. Could have been anybody, any villain that you wanted to put in there. In fact, I think it would have been more interesting if maybe they'd put it as a Dalek, or a Cyberman, or some species or another the Doctor already has a past with, because Sinja was really just another, protagonist of the week. I mean, bringing him back here, it's just an attempt to make it look like it's something epic when it really isn't. One thing about it, too, the Ooze worshipping this Sinja as a god. I mean, come on. Really? Really? These guys mess with the universe on a daily basis. Are they really going to be fooled by some guy covered with teeth who just happens to appear one day? It doesn't make any sense to me. By the way, what were the Ooks planning to build before Sinsha arrived? I mean, were they going to make some kind of planet-moving / shrinking fortress anyway? I mean, just what the frack, man? Larry says, Terry Nation gets paid when Daleks show up. Yes, he does. He does. They get paid. They could have done something else. It just seems like they're trying to tack this on to make it look epic when it really isn't. So, stealing the planets is also a bit of a cringe moment. I know, again, this was supposed to be Chris Chibnall making something epic, but largely it fails. It's big, certainly, but it lacks any real tension because you know the Doctor's going to figure it out. There just isn't, as another cringe moment, there isn't that much tension in this episode. The only tension really was a couple of places. You wondered whether or not Graham was actually going to kill Sinsha. Well, probably not. Just going into it, probably not. It was only tense, frankly, because of Bradley Walsh's very subdued performance about that, and I really liked that. I'll talk about that when I get to his performance. He makes you think that, he might actually kill him. But the moment Sinsha shows up, I knew Graham wasn't going to kill him. Only other real tension is if either of the Ooks would die. I wondered about that for about 5 seconds, and then after it was all over, okay, they were fine. Larry says, epic fail. I wouldn't classify it as an epic fail. More a failure to make an epic. The episode is not a giant fail. It's just mediocre. Other cringe moments, Ryan and Graham. I mean, the whole, we're family thing. In the last episode, he called him grandfather for the first time. I mean, I saw this coming from episode 1. You can go back and look. If you thought they weren't going to get to this place, well, I guess you're not a Fandi master. But to me, it was utterly predictable. The planets and the crystals. Okay, is everybody on these planets still alive? If so, where is the sun coming from and all of that? Is this kind of like the bottle city of Kandor that's in Superman mythos? By the way, I'm doing Superman the movie tomorrow night. I mean, I guess, it just opens up a lot of questions that are never answered. One thing about this too, and Graham mentions it, they really should have just killed Shinza in the first episode. I mean, I know the Doctor doesn't like that, but really, it would have saved all kinds of deaths, clearly. Not, 8 ships full of people to start with, and then not to mention moving these planets and shrinking people. I mean, who knows how many people died in the planets in that thing? I mean, it couldn't have been simple. And was it all of them? Because like I say, are they all alive? Were they just successfully shrunk and they lived? I mean, who knows? Who knows? It's just questions that come up and I go, what? And there frankly are a lot of generally unanswered questions in this episode, but, there's so many and it's just pointless to talk about them. There's so many. Now, in terms of great moments, there were a couple of 3. Graham, as usual, I like Graham's performance, and I will talk about more of that when I get into the characters. And otherwise, I really don't have any great moments. That was really it. I have more mediocre moments. I was briefly on my seat when Paltraki had no memory and was pointing the gun at the Doctor and her companions. And by the way, there was some good music that underscored that, and it was a dark place, so that underscored all of that. But, you weren't really thinking he was going to shoot anybody, especially not the Doctor, because, we know she's not going to regenerate this episode, right? Mediocre things otherwise, the Ooks. I liked the concept behind the Ooks. The problem was these guys were a Deus Ex Machina all the way through. They were first a Deus Ex Machina for Sinsha, and then they were a Deus Ex Machina for the Doctor. Now, if you don't know, a Deus Ex Machina goes back to Greek times. It means literally God out of the machine. In some ancient Greek plays, they would actually end the thing by having the gods come down and fix everything. And so what we talk about a Deus Ex Machina today is when somebody like the Ooks exists who can do practically anything, and they kind of come down and fix everything in the end. Deus Ex Machinas are bad, okay? They just don't work. They're not good. All right, writer on this one, Chris Chibnall, the head writer and showrunner for this season. In terms of his writing, I've talked about it. I really have talked about it in most of my cringe and mediocre moments. This was a mediocre episode. Another mediocre episode, which I'll talk about. I'm going to do a roundup. I'm going to do a season 11 roundup at the end of this. And it was masquerading as an epic series finale. And again, when I get to the some of the details, I'll talk about it in my season roundup. Now, performances. There was Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. Oops, how did that get in there? Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. She's fine. There has not been anything this whole season that has really stretched her talents as an actor. She's just doing the Doctor, getting excited where she should, and just doing Doctor things. This Doctor has reminded me quite a lot of pre-Time War Doctors. I'm sorry, I'm going to show this off. Pre-Time War Doctors that just did one-and-done episodes. They didn't get a lot of characterization. They were just the Doctor going around saving planets and being pretty sort of marvelous, but, no real character development, no, anything going on that stretches them as an actor. I would have to say that previous Doctors since 2005 have generally had material that does stretch them as actors. Generally because, to some extent, in the background, they've got this time war. And Jodie Whittaker still has that in her background. The fact that she changed into a woman doesn't mean that all of a sudden she gets forgiven for this apparently ton of blood that she has on her hand because of the time war. So just nearly nothing there for her. Then we have Bradley Walsh, again, as Graham, the character with whom I generally can associate with most. He, again, is about my age, which is totally different for any companion, really, that's happened ever in this series. I can identify him with on that basis, but I also really like his performance here. When he figures out it's Sinja again, he's just like, okay, I'm going to kill him. He's totally nonchalant about it. He doesn't, get all excited about it. It's nice and subdued. It's what it should be for this sort of thing from that character. It's just, well, Doctor, I'm going to kill him. If I get a chance, I'm going to kill him. And it works out really well. I think that's a really great way to do it. Other than that, not much to say. I mean, the end where he decided he isn't going to kill Shinza because he's going to be the better man. Predictable, just predictable. You knew it was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen. What was going to happen? He's going to kill the guy and the Doctor's going to chuck him off? No. He's going to do the right thing. You knew he was. Saw it coming a million miles away. Larry says, can 10 one-hour episodes be considered a full season of any show? Yeah. Well, I mean, they usually have about 13, 10 to 12 to 13. Sorry, got a big ass frog in my throat that time. They usually do 12 to 13, but the problem is they also usually have a season-long arc. And because of that, then it turns into something like it feels like a season. This one was all one end done, with the exception of basically kind of bookending it with Sinja at the beginning at the end. But that's not epic. That's just bookending. Other actors, Mandip Gill, again, as Yaz. She's fine. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but she still has no character development. We don't really know anything about this character. Certainly this episode wasn't anything that stretched her skills in any way. Her biggest thing that she did was be what sometimes companions are, which is they're the conduit to the audience. The Doctor tells them what's going on, and then that way the audience knows what's going on. But in previous ones, it's been mixed in with other things like character development. Here it's just she's doing things, finding out stuff. But to me, it was all things and stuff that were so totally predictable. And really, all she does is react to what's going on around her. That's really all she does. Then we have Tosun Cole, and I was able to find at least a better picture of him. I've had a hard time finding a picture of Tosun Cole. I've looked around and around. Apparently, the man just never smiles for a picture. I've got some. I looked at some where he's on runways, on the red carpet, and he just doesn't smile. So this is the best I can do. Yasmin is a cop. Amy Pond was a cop. Well, Amy Pond wasn't really a cop, but Yasmin is, and I am going to talk about that when I get to the season roundup. Yeah. But Mandip Gill plays Ryan, and he does fine. There's nothing here that stretches him as an actor. When they got to the point where he was, considering Graham family, again, totally predictable to me. I knew they were going to get to that point. You just knew. First time you saw it, you knew. And that's the only character development that anybody's got. And it's totally predictable. So, he's doing a good job. There's just nothing here that really stretches him like everybody else. Let me get to our guest stars. Mark Addy as Paltraki. Now, since we haven't done him before in the show, I'm going to do what I usually do in my longer ones. His IMDb goes 1987 to 2019. He's got one completed that is not released, scheduled for next year. Not surprisingly, it's December. He has 59 actor credits, and he has done largely British TV with multiple TV series and multiple regulars. Now, that's a fairly decent length of time, 87 to 2019. 59 credits may not sound like a ton, but he did multiple regular characters. In fact, one of his 59 credits translates into 88 episodes of the TV series Still Standing. So that's not bad at all. He's doing some work. He's also, his fifth credited role, and I certainly don't remember it from it, but his fifth credited role is for 3 episodes of Married with Children. It's the episodes where the Bundys go to England. And I remember the episodes. I don't remember him specifically. But he's won the Screen Actors Guild Award in 1998 for Outstanding Performance by a Cast for the series The Full Monty that he was in. And he has 7 other nominations. In terms of his performance, I think it's pretty good. He's at first doing a character that's almost amusing, if he wasn't so damn dangerous by that gun. Almost amusing because he's saying, he's got no memory of what he'd done. Can't remember where he's been. Barely remember. I don't think he remembers his name at first. And then he gets told this stuff by the doctor. And he has no short-term memory either. So he doesn't remember what she's told him from moment to moment. That's a pretty good characterization. And then he starts to get his memory back, and it starts to fall into place, and the audience starts figuring things out about what's going on. And he's good. As far as it goes, he's fine. He's playing a captain with no memory that's slowly getting it back, and he plays that well. He's got a fine performance there. Now, as the first of our ooks, we have Phyllis Logan as Andino. And again, I haven't done her on the show, so she has, her IMDb goes 1977 to 2010 with 1 in filming for a 2020 release. I'm sorry, she was 1987 to 2020 rather, because she's got 1 that's filming for a 2020 release and 1 that's in post-production for a 2019 release. She has 85 acting credits to her name with largely British TV series and multiple TV series with multiple regulars. Seeing a bit of a pattern here, what with Chris Chibnall having worked on Downton Abbey. He's bringing in a lot of people that worked with him on Downton Abbey. In this particular case, 1 of her 85 credits is for 52 episodes of Downton Abbey, and 1 of those credits is also for 47 episodes of Lovejoy. So she's been working. I always like to point out to people, anytime you get to a point where you're doing like more than 1 project a year, 1 project or more, you've gotten into a place where most actors never get. You've gotten into a place where people can actually support themselves acting. Most actors can't support themselves acting. Most of them spend lots of times going on auditions that they don't make anything for, and spending most of their time doing something else. They can't support themselves that way. They're mostly waiters and stuff like that. I like to say, you'll never know these people's names. There's thousands of them out there. You'll never know their names unless they happen to sign the check that they can hand to you to pay for your meal. Over there, it says, what planet is the TARDIS on behind me? Well, it comes out of the episode, I believe it's, oh gosh, I'm forgetting. It's a Star Trek episode. It's, God, I'm not remembering the name off the top of my head. It's the first one that they ever did with a penal colony. This is from Star Trek Remastered. It is a still from Star Trek Remastered that I've put the TARDIS into. If you look closely, if I get out of the way, you can see there's a structure down there. And it's the episode with Helen Noel. Oh, God, Helen Noel, the woman who is always near the top of the list for people like me in terms of extraordinarily attractive women who have been on Star Trek, the original series. So that was the episode with her. So, Phyllis Logan, she has won awards. She won the BAFTA in 1984 for Most Outstanding Newcomer to a Film for Another Time, Another Place. She won the Evening Standard British Film Awards in 1984, Best Actress for Another Time, Another Place. She won the SAG Award in 2013, 2015, and 2016 for Outstanding Performance by an Ensemble in a Drama Series for Downton Abbey. And she won the Tower Mina. Tripped over that one and run through too. International Film Festival Award in 1983. The Golden Mask for Another Time, Another Place. And her performance. She does fine. Again, there really isn't a hell of a lot that stretches anybody's talents as an actor here. If it's her, she comes the closest, probably. The thing about it was she was playing a woman who thought that Sinshaw was a god, right? Now, I know lots of people who believe in some god. If you were to come up with them with definitive proof that their god was a phony, I think you'd have a hard time, much harder time convincing them, and they would be much more devastated, to find out that their god was a phony. She didn't, because of the demands of the script, she didn't have that much time to do it. She does look like she is a bit, but what do? You're shoving something into an hour. So, did as fine as she could, given the performance the time that she had. Then we have Purcell Scott as Delph, the other of the Ooks. He has an IMDb that goes to 2010 to 2019, with 2 in post right now. It's also got 31 acting credits. One of those is for 30 episodes of Wizards vs. Aliens and 16 episodes of The Youngsters, as well as 8 episodes of The Innocents. So again, 31 acting credits over that period of time, 9 years or so, is not bad. And the fact that he's done all of these different performances on a TV series is a good thing. It shows he's working a lot. He also has 3 producer credits, 2 writer credits, and he has done exclusively television. His performance here, geez, what do you say? The guy really just stands around a lot with funky-looking eyes. That's really all he does. And he makes things happen that seem to be difficult. That's really all he does. There really isn't that much to talk about with his performance. He's fine. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with his performance, but, it's just not much there for him. Back again as Sinshaw, we have Samuel Oatley. Won't talk about his IMDb. He did that in the first episode. His performance here is fine again. Fine. It's fine. He's under a ton of makeup, but he still, manages to give some emotion that we can tell, which is a good thing. He's playing the character much older and a lot more messed up physically than he was before. He does that successfully. I can't say much more about it. He's a mean, nasty, horrible, ugly guy, and he does mean, nasty, ugly, horrible things, and he portrays mean, nasty, ugly, horrible things well. And then he gets chucked into a stasis chamber at the end. So again, nothing wrong with the performance. I wouldn't say there's anything here that stretches his skills, and in any case, he's stuck under so much makeup. It's a problem anytime you do any of those kinds of appliances. They did a good job on it, but still, how do you portray emotion when your entire face, head, body, etc. is covered with appliances here and body armor here, and it's the problem that all Klingons have. How do you emote through that much makeup? So, in terms of the rest, well, there's everybody else. There's only one credited in IMDb, Jan Lee as San. I guess she's in there. I mean, you know, she's on the show. She doesn't really do anything. This is actually her first credited role. She's got 2 others on IMDb that are shorts completed, not yet released. But she's fine. She's fine. Really, I'm going to say a lot about this. It's fine. You know, it's mediocre. Going to talk about ratings again. Now, to explain what these are again, overnight TV ratings include only those who watched it live and who recorded it and watched it later that night. The consolidated ratings include people who recorded it and then watched it within a week, which probably makes it a somewhat more accurate, viewer amount. And then we have this AI, which is the Audience Appreciation Index. It's a score out of 100 that is used to indicate the public's appreciation for this show. Over 90 is considered exceptional, 85 or over is excellent, 60 or less is poor, and less than 55 is very poor. As we can see here, if you look at the thing here, we are seeing consistently lower ratings as we go on. Zulu as Kono. Yeah. Yeah. It's just so mediocre. And I think that's probably reflected in the ratings here. You can see that we've got ratings that are consistently going down. Now, the big drop after the first episode, that's kind of to be expected. I mean, everybody's going to tune in to watch the first female doctor. After that, we're dropping down, and, you know, we're down in the 7 million range now. It's been slowly dropping down. This is not something where you have to worry about the show being canceled over. You know, many of the episodes in Capaldi's era were quite less than 7 million. I think his lowest was 3-point-something million. So I don't think you have to worry about the show being canceled. What I find more interesting is the Audience Appreciation Index. It continues to hover around the 80 area. As I say, 85 is great, is excellent. 60 or less is poor. This is, you know, in the high middle. I'd have to kind of agree with that. You know, as I say, this is a mediocre episode. Now, we get into the production. The director on this is Jamie Childs, Cinema 4. The direction here seems to be largely dictated by the production design. Now, hang on a sec, I got a coffee. Now, one always hopes, you know, that you have some level of collaboration going on between the director, the cinematographer, the production designer. You always hope that there's some level of collaboration, and one hopes that that was what was going on here. But regardless, the direction was largely driven by the sets. You know, you have the interior of what looks like a broken-down alien spaceship. You know, he shot that well. There was nothing wrong with it. You had basically wide shots with everybody, some close-ups. That whole section of it had what little tension there was partly because of the way it was directed and partly because of the production design. Other than that, I mean, you know, you get into the big ship, and that's it's all very dark. It's kind of closed in most places, although it has high ceilings, but you don't really get much of an impression for that because it's all kind of dark. And I'm going to get into that here with the cinematography, which is by Sam Heisman. I think he's been around on the show before. Say a lot of times you hope that there is, again, collaboration between the director and the cinematographer. Director's job is to get a shot. Is to tell what shots he wants. Cinematographer's job is to get the shots. And you hope there's a collaboration going on where maybe the director says, hey, I want this shot, and the cinematographer says, you know, I've got something, if you do this a little bit differently, maybe we could get something that's a little more dramatic. I don't know if that's going on, never do. Have to be on set or behind the scenes to know that, and I don't. So I have to fall back on the old standbys for your average cinematographer, which is, could you see what you were supposed to see, and did you know what you were supposed to look at? Yes, I knew what I was supposed to look at the whole time. Could I see what I was supposed to see? Not always. The interior of the big, I don't know, monolith thing was lit very dark. I'm sure it was on purpose. You don't do that by accident. But the problem is when you light it that dark, it's hard to see much of the set. You can see what's in front of the characters and what's nearby them. You can get a feel for maybe there's some tall ceilings in there, but you don't see much. Again, it's certainly a creative choice that was made on purpose, but for me, it made it hard to see. So maybe I would have done it a little bit lighter than they had. Not as light as some of the stuff they've done, but a little bit lighter. Visual effects. We get somebody actually credited as a supervisor this time. It's Des Anwar. Those visual effects are great. I mean, they're always great, unless something looks terrible like last week with that frog. You don't even necessarily call them out. They're getting to a point now where they're doing a lot of holographic displays, and those are obviously going to be, special effects married in later. I suspect that there were green screens in places that I did not know. They do that a lot, so it's really hard to tell sometimes. If they were doing that a lot, they did a great job. I could not tell. The special effects were fine. They were what we usually are expecting from this show, and you don't even really call it out. Unless, like last week, you have a frog that looks stupidly fake. Production design, again, as with almost all the episodes this season, Arwell Jones. Well, the production design was fine. It's just that the way it was lit, especially in the giant monolith, what did that look like exactly? Can you walk away from that knowing what it looked like? Or even that spaceship, right? You saw the interior. You never really saw the exterior much. And the spaceship is kind of busted up, and then it's suddenly not busted up. So the production design was fine. It's just that you really didn't get a feel for what everything looked like. You had 2 or 3 rooms that the whole thing took place in, and a couple of corridors. It was fine for what you needed, but again, for me, it was like, what does this look like exactly? I mean, we know what the exterior of that big monolith looks like. How does this interior fit into it, But put it all together, the production design, cinematography, the direction. It did give you a feeling of kind of being trapped and cramped a little bit, which I'm sure was intentional. And that did, to some extent, push some of what they were wanting to have for tension. Don't think it was very, don't think it was very successful, but they tried. Makeup, again, as always, is by Amy Riley. She does a fine job. In this case, again, we're seeing Sinshu with that, full head, face, Makeup and teeth sticking out all over it, which is fine. Looks great. It looks older than the last time we saw him, which makes perfect sense. As I said, it feels like, the same kind of makeup as the Predator, and I'm not sure why. But it did remind me of the Predator's face for some reason. It always has. And then on the Ooks, there were some facial appliances that she put on, basically differentiated them from the humans. Fine. I'm sure they did a lot of work on Sinshu, but on the whole, when you look at it as a viewer, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We have Ray Holman doing costumes on this one, as generally is the case. And as generally is the case, he does a fine job. As always, the regulars are wearing the same clothes. And then we have the alien, Sinshu, who is wearing essentially the same, armor thing that he was wearing, except now he's a lot more messed up. He has pipes, tubes and stuff sticking out. All of that was fine. They were, it was the same costume, really, with a lot of additions. There really isn't anything wrong with it. It was fine. I'm sure he worked hard on it, but, it's an episode that's just fine, so nothing jumps out at you, really, including that. The rest of the costumes, he had some aliens with some costumes that did sort of tell some things about themselves. The Ooks had some stuff going on with their costumes that made them look not necessarily regal, but different. Something like you might expect people who can mess with the whole universe anytime they want, things like that. And, of course, there was the captain with his uniform, and that made sense. So it was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Music, as always, by Segun Akinola. The music was fine. There were moments, like I say, when, they had the gun pointed at the doctor. Music underscoring that it jumped out at me as being pretty good. It was trying to create a tense moment that unfortunately just wasn't tense because you knew how it was going to work out. You just knew. There were other places. I'm not exactly sure where. I did not watch this episode more than once. It was just so mediocre I didn't feel like it. But there were moments where the music jumped out at me as being good, particularly good in terms of underscoring what they were trying to do. Not what happened, but what they were trying to do. So, music is fine. Can't say there was any place where the music jumped out at me as wrong. So that's oftentimes, I look for two things. I'm an audiophile, big soundtrack person. And so I look for things, or rather I automatically hear them when it's out of place, when it does something where it's just wrong, where it doesn't underscore the action at all. And I also notice on the other side when they do something that's so good that it jumps out at you and says, wow, this is great. I'll talk about that a lot tomorrow when I talk about the soundtrack and score for Superman in 1978. This certainly doesn't rise to the level yet of Maestro material, but it was fine. It was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It was fine. That's basically the end of the review. So we can ask ourselves, is it any good? Well, it's mediocre. It's just mediocre. Would I recommend watching it? I guess if you got an hour to kill, sure, you can watch it once. I was not motivated to watch it again, and I'm doing the review for it. It's not bad. It's just not that good either. It is just mediocre. So now we got one I'm going to take out as a clip, the Season 11 Roundup. So, kind of looking at the whole season, the entire 10 episodes, as a roundup. One word, one simple word, mediocre. That's basically how you can sum up this season, just mostly mediocre. There were a few episodes that had some nice moments, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to really remember this season, with the possible exception of the episode Rosa. But, to be honest, if you asked me, what happened in particular episodes, if you gave me a title at this point, I probably wouldn't remember exactly what happened inside of it. If you said, yeah, what about that one where they found a mirror dimension? I go, oh, yeah, I remember that. They did that this season. But when I walk away from this, next month, I'm not going to be sitting down to go, wow, that was amazing. Most of the time with Doctor Who, previously, they have done something, where they've had an arc for an entire season that wraps up in the last couple of episodes where you do kind of walk away feeling, wow, the first season, the parting of the ways, you walked away going, wow, the last of the Time Lords. I mean, that's when you remember. You walk away going, wow, and there just usually are. This is not one. There's no walking away from the season going, wow, that was amazing. It was just, it's okay, it's mediocre. And the problem, as I've been saying all through my reviews, is this fault lies with one man, Chris Chibnall. And that's because he's missing, as I've been saying the entire season, you need a good kind of character development for all of your characters, and 3 is too many. You can't get character development, and I'm not sure he's even trying very hard. The Doctor in particular, we don't have any character development with this Doctor at all. There is no character development. My fear, honestly, I haven't really seen what I'd call social justice warrior stuff in here, but my fear is that he just went, well, it's a woman. We can show how a woman reacts to all this stuff, and we don't have to give her character development. But then again, nobody else has any character development, really. Ryan and Graham have a little, but again, that was totally predictable to me right from the beginning. I think I said it on the first episode. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where, Ryan calls, Graham granddad, and they think about each other's family. Predictable, predictable. Yaz, of course, we still know almost nothing about her. I mean, think about it. As a character, we actually know more about her mother I'm sorry, her grandmother than we do her, because of that one episode where they went back in time. We actually know more about her grandmother. All she really has done so far, all this season, is just react to what goes on around her, and is occasionally sent out to find out some information, usually with somebody else. And we don't know that much about her character. You know, she's a police constable, right? You would think, like a police constable, especially one like she says in the beginning, first episode, where she wants to go out and do more interesting things than just, you know, doing the occasional thing with, you know, people who've smashed cars. You would think that this type of person would want to be doing things more aggressively, you know, be inclined to more put herself in harm's way when it comes around. You know, like this episode when the doctor's got a gun pointed at her. Maybe she should come forward and use some of her skills as a police constable and say, hold on, don't shoot anybody. You know, maybe get in front of the doctor, for that matter. She's a cop. You would think she'd do this more like a cop, and she doesn't. There's just no character development here. You need, as I've said over and over, a season-long arc. Something where you have one episode that asks some questions, then the next episode maybe answers some of those questions while asking a few more, next episode, etc. And you finally build up to a big climax in the last 2 or so episodes. That's how Doctor Who has done things since 2005. It has worked very successfully, and it has not here. This episode has a pretense of being a series-long arc, but it's not really. It really isn't. If anything, it's just a bookend. You know, you have this alien come up at the beginning, you have him come up at the end. This is a bookend. It is not connected anywhere in between. A real series-long arc has the Doctor bumping into pieces and parts of this puzzle, this arc, all the way throughout the season. None of that here. It's just a bookend. We get the bad guy alien at the beginning, we see him at the end. It's just a bookend. And again, here, the bad guy alien could have been anyone. Sin Shah is really here. His only real thing is to provide character development for Graham. But again, as a Fandi master, you go, you know he's not going to kill him. You just know. You know, his performance is, you know, Bradley Walsh's performance is good enough that had it been any other show, had it been not Doctor Who, you could have sort of thought maybe he will kill him. But because it's Doctor Who, and because the Doctor doesn't allow her companions to do that kind of thing, you just knew he wasn't going to kill Sin Shah. And again, this is all on Chris Chibnall. The things I like that he's done, and the things that I think are keeping viewers more around, is because, you know, the Capaldi era, sadly, went very, very dark. And that doesn't work on Doctor Who. If you look back at the classic series, when did it get canceled? When John Nathan Turner took it too dark. I think they should have a nice big banner in the writer's room that says, when you make the Doctor too dark, people stop watching. So the fact that he's gotten a lighter Doctor, the fact that he's got a faster pace is a good thing, but he's missing this big picture. Continue to say it. I do not think that he's the right person to be a showrunner or head writer for this show. I think the BBC needs to let him go right now. Unfortunately, I know that he's up for another season. So we're going to have to live through, hopefully, not another season of just mediocre scripts, but I suspect it will be. And I think the show needs somebody like, not Stephen Moffat, because he jumped the shark already, somebody like Stephen Moffat before he jumped the shark after the Day of the Doctor. Chibnall just isn't that good. A lot of times, under the last 2 showrunners, this show has kept me guessing from time to time, which is hard to do because I am a Fandi master, and that means I've seen everything. So keeping me guessing is tough. I'm the guy you should be aiming at, frankly. If you're writing science fiction, I'm the guy you should be aiming at. You should be trying to keep me guessing. If you can keep me guessing, probably everybody else is going to be kept guessing. But no, not here, not the whole season. It's just mediocre and generally predictable. That's what I have to say about the season as a whole, as a roundup. Mediocre and kind of predictable. Okay, well, boy, I'm going to have a really short show comparatively tonight. Usually I get an hour at least. I may not get to an hour today, and half of it's going to be pushing this. New Year's Day. I learned a few weeks ago that one of my regular viewers has a brother who lost everything in the campfire, and this is, in fact, what Paradise, California, where he came from, looks like. And at the time, I asked him if there was anything I could do, and I was thinking about that personally, and then I thought to myself a little bit after that, I was like, wait, hold on. You got a whole show. There's some stuff you can do here. So on New Year's Day, I'm going to hold a 5-hour charity live stream, which will raise money for campfire survivors. I'm not sure which charity it's going to be yet. If you are Super Crew 63 and you are watching this in the archives or watching it now, I would appreciate it if you would get a hold of me at wrs@wrstone.com, because I'd like to ask you about specific charities that might benefit your brother. I'll also be doing non-spoiler reviews of The Orville, the first episode of the second season, and a Doctor Who New Year's Day special. I'll probably have some interviews. I've got one lined up. I've got one that I'm bugging the hell out of. Both of which would be great. I now, as amazingly enough, Star Trek Axanar is going to go forward. It's only going to be 2 15-minute episodes, sadly, but that is going to go forward. So now there's some people on that side of the world that I'm going to try to get as well. So hopefully I'll have some good interviews to go along with that. And as always, this is going to make it out sometime as its own video. But I always want to point this out because I think it's really important, and it's something that science fiction fans can really be proud of. It is a fact. I have seen it myself. It is a fact that science fiction fans have always been kind of an extended family for each other. And I have witnessed this. As a Fandi master, I have witnessed this for decades. You can go back to when Robert A. Heinlein was alive, and he'd go to conventions, and because he was he had a bad condition early in his life, he used to donate blood, and everybody at the conventions would donate blood, just, by the masses. And that's just a little one. I have seen over and over where, before the internet even, fans had a network of people. I mean, my God, if I want to know who anybody is, I am lucky enough that I'm on somewhat speaking terms with Bijo Trimble. Bijo Trimble knows everybody. So if I ever want to know how to get a hold of somebody, usually I contact Bijo and I say, how do you get a hold of this? Can you get a hold of this person? Can you get him, in the foot in the door? But the deal is we always know each other, and we know people who know people who know people who know people. And sometimes you can find out, that down the chain a bit, there's somebody right there who can help you out. I had a friend who was in one of those big storms that was not being very communicative. So I started checking around. And people who knew people who knew people who knew people eventually found him. So that's how we've been. And Fannish History, that's just my life. If you look back at Fannish History, it also tells you this is how we've always been. And we will always disagree about our favorite movie. Oh, man, The Last Jedi is not the first thing in fandom that has divided it. I remember Space 1999, and that was a big division. I remember Star Trek just a little, but people old enough to remember that will know. Star Trek was a big deal in terms of, is this any good or not? Literary science fiction fans at that time, which were the majority, still considered Star Trek, while better than most of what was on TV, not that good. So it's always gone on. And we will do this very loudly and occasionally very, very emotionally. However, when the need arises, when the chips are down, we have never failed to help fellow fans in need, because this is who we are. This is who we've been for 100 years, and we can be damn proud of that. So again, I have my New Year's Day live stream. I'll be doing that for a charity to help victims get back on their feet. So please do join me with that live stream. Spread the word to other fans if you can. Let them know about it. And our time is different here. I'm not going to do it at the regular time because I want to give you guys a chance to maybe get over your hangovers from the preceding night. Maybe watch a little football in the morning. And then I'll be finishing up before midnight on the East Coast. So in order to do that, my times will be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off UTC for the first time, it'll be the same day at 11 p.m. And remember, guys, remember this and be very, very proud, because it is true. We're fans. When one of our own is down, we will always help them up. This is who we are, and this is who we've been for more than a century, and it really does set us apart from everyone else among the stars. So in closing, might do a little bit of ad copy in my vain attempts, generally speaking, to imitate Ernie Anderson, who was one of those voiceover guys that you heard forever, if you grew up at the time I did. So just be aware, this is the last episode, so I'm not doing any more Sunday night reviews. When the Orville comes up, I will be doing reviews. If I can get a review prepped and done, I will do it immediately after the Orville airs on Thursdays. If I can't, I'll do it at my regular time, but on Fridays. But until then, until January, when the Orville comes back, I'm just going to be on Mondays. So, tomorrow on Tales from SYL Ranch. Once there was a civilization much like ours, but with greater intelligence, greater powers, and a greater capacity for good. In one tragic moment, that world was destroyed. But there was one survivor, because of the wisdom and compassion of Jor-El, because he knew the human race had the capacity for goodness. He sent us his only son. His name is Kal-El, but he will call himself Clark Kent. But the world will know him as Superman. Tomorrow, on the Fandi Masters' 40th anniversary review of Superman, you will believe a man can fly. And my schedule, as always, for that will be 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off of UTC, it'll be 2 a.m. the next day. Expect tomorrow to run long. Not because I'm setting context. I've already done that for 1978, so I'm not going to do that. But because of how, for me personally, this is a very important movie. I'll mention that, since I have the time, I'll mention that this movie has always... See, Star Wars is probably my #1 favorite movie of all time. The first one. And Superman and Star Trek II kind of constantly vacillate between whether one's #2 or one's #3. Now, having watched this one repeatedly over the last couple of months, and in this week, 3 times, and I'm going to sit down and watch it again just for kicks, just because I like it so much, Superman is now edging towards #1. So I don't know if at some point I won't have Superman and Star Wars sitting there edging each other out all the time. But right now, having watched it again and again and not getting tired of it ever, it's inching up there. And it is like Star Wars. Star Wars you can throw at me 24/7, 365. I will watch it. And the same thing with Superman. You can throw that at me 24/7, 365, and I'll watch it. To be honest, the same thing is true for Star Trek too, but for totally different reasons. So that's how important this film is to me, and it's been a big deal. I've been doing stuff for prep for it off and on for a couple of months. So I'm going to probably run long because of things that I have to say on that. So it's going to be a good review. It's going to be a fairly long review, and it's going to be in-depth, and it's also going to talk about how some of the things that it means to me personally, how they get the character of Superman right and why, and how I know this from my own background. And I'm going to throw in a little libertarian philosophy along with that. So, my upcoming reviews, there is a schedule on my website at www.wrstone.com. If you go to the schedule page, and if you click on any given review, I'll give you a hint. I generally have attempted to find somewhere on the internet that you can watch this for free. As always, as a guy who had been in IT 40 years, man and boy, I can tell you always, always, always use aggressive ad blockers, just as a matter of course, in your web browser. And I suggest uBlock Origin. You'll find it in your web browser's add-on repository. After Superman, the week after that, I am doing Quatermass and the Pit. And then the week of Christmas, December 26th, different day, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. That's just a fun one. That is just a fun little piece of schlock. Like Larry said, it's a fun little piece of schlock, so that'll be fun. And again, want to remind you of my 5-hour charity live stream where I'm going to try to raise money for victims of the Camp Fire. And again, the times on that are 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off of UTC, 11 p.m. with those non-spoiler reviews and hopefully multiple interviews with multiple people that you will find very, very interesting. So then on January 7th, I do the 70th anniversary of The Son of Frankenstein. With January 14th, the 100th anniversary of Mistress of the World. And I believe, I don't have it written down right here, but I believe at Larry's kind of suggestion last week, I'm going to do a 66th anniversary review of the original movie King Kong. So that'll be kind of fun. Now, in terms of supporting my show, please, if nothing else, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock, please, to do the same. And in terms of contributions, I would ask that you hold back on those for right now. Save your contributions for my 5-hour charity live stream because, as the picture can show you, there are clearly people who need this money a hell of a lot more than I do. Because I got a house. I have somewhere to live. They don't. This is what they got. So, save something for these guys. They need it. As to people who do contribute to me in terms of financially, I very much appreciate it. If you buy me something out of my Amazon wish list, which is also on www.wrstone.com, if you buy me something off of that, it goes to help out my photography and everything that's going on here in terms of my studio. I'm already using one that one viewer got for me. There's a laptop on there, a very nice little laptop. It's a gaming rig. It builds itself and stuff. But the first thing that I will do with that thing when I get it is wipe Windows and install a Linux Mint, probably 19.2 or later, depends when I get the thing. And that will make most of my technical problems disappear. I am perturbed that I can only come to you in 10 lousy frames per second. I would really like to be doing 24. If I could make 60, I'd be awesome, but 24 to 30 would be great. That's kind of standard for video, with 60 frames per second being standard for games. But coming to you in 10 frames per second, I don't like very much. So that laptop would make all of that go away because it's much newer than the current equipment that I'm running on. In fact, if I had that laptop, I wouldn't be doing recorded interviews, which is what I have to do for my 5-hour charity live stream. I would be able to do those live, with assuming people's schedules lined up. But I can't do that because the computer I've got right now will not simultaneously bring in an audio signal, encode it, and send it out. Anytime I've tried that to do anything more complicated than I'm doing right now, the stream blows up completely. So that laptop will completely make all that go away. And if you buy the laptop for me outright, you get to be the program director of my show and tell me exactly what to do and where to do it and what time and everything. I don't expect that necessarily, so all of the financial donations go toward buying that thing. And just beyond that, personally, as I said at the top of the show, I used to be a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I used to be an actor, not a very successful one. I was successful enough 1 year for those thousands of actors who really just wait tables. I was pretty successful 1 year and really never after that. So when you give me money, it is feeding my ego on two levels. First, that you're even interested in the fact that I have opinions. And secondly, I am doing a little bit of showmanship here. That's the reason I'm growing back my beard, by the way. I didn't like the double chins and the fact that I have a little bit of a turkey neck. And as it turns out, I can do that now. There was a problem with one place on my mustache. That seems to have gone away. So I'm bringing back the beard so that that'll be also part of my showmanship. So I do a little bit of that. And so to be paid for that, it's just a giant ego boost for me, I have to say. So, that all said, I guess that is all the time that we have today, boys and girls. So, tune in again tomorrow for the Fandi Masters 40th anniversary review of Superman. And trust me, when I am done with that, you will believe a man can fly. Until then, this is Tales from SYL Ranch, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.